Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the We Achieve More When We Choose to Challenge digital event. This is organised and hosted by Cornwall Women's Fund and the Chartered Management Institute, or CMI, Southwest Regional Board. I'm Amanda Stratford, and together with 4 other women, we launched Cornwall Women's Fund in February last year. Our purpose is to unite people in philanthropy, encouraging gifts of time and money to invest in improving the lives of women and girls in Cornwall and the Isles of Scilly, and to inspire them to live the lives they want to live. We've already invested funding in 5 fabulous projects across Cornwall, and it's the focus of Inspire that has led us to develop today's event to celebrate International Women's Day this week. There are some truly awesome women in conversation with us today, and we very much hope that you will enjoy hearing about how they have in different ways chosen to challenge, and we hope you'll be encouraged to find out more about how you could join us in our mission to invest, improve and inspire the women and girls of Cornwall. Nina.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Nina Murray, and I'm the Social Media and Communications Lead for the CMI Southwest Regional Board. The CMI, the Chartered Management Institute, develops leaders and managers through development and training, qualifications and research, as well as our membership. Today, our focus will be on CMI Women, and the purpose of CMI Women is to develop the world's strongest pipeline of female leaders. I'm very excited. In a minute, I'll be passing you over to our host of our amazing panel today, who will be Dr. Lois Farquharson. But just wanted to also mention that if you had any questions throughout the event, you can use the chat box on the right side of your screen. Pop the questions in the chat box, we'll monitor them, and we'll try to make sure that we answer as many of them as possible. I also wanted to mention that we're recording today's event, so anyone who is booked to attend will receive a copy of the recording tomorrow, as well as this will be made available on the CMI website and the CMI YouTube channel. So if you wish to share it with your friends or any following that you might have, then you're more than welcome to do so. For now, I'm passing you over to our host of the event, who is Dr. Lois Farquharson, who is also one of the CMI Southwest Regional Board members and a CMI Women Lead.
Great, thank you, Nina. It's an absolute pleasure to be here, and I welcome all of you again. It's really exciting that we have a brilliant panel of 3 speakers with us today, and I'm delighted to introduce you to them. First of all, I'll just introduce you quickly to me. I'm the Executive Dean of Bournemouth University Business School, and one of the things that I have been thinking about for this event is how do I describe myself, because I've asked our 3 panel members to speak in a moment about something that's special to them, that represents them. So we'll come on to that in a second. But I was starting to think, well, what represents me? And one of the photos that will come up shortly it's a collage. It's just about all the different things that are in life and work for me. So it's full of lots of things, and I think one of the things for me about being a woman leader in my job as an executive dean is really about life and work being about people, but it also is full of responsibilities. sometimes heavy responsibilities in the pandemic, but at the same time, it's about fun and it's about family and it's about relationships. And I think that is the trick, is for us to find where our balance is. And our panelists today, I'm sure, will talk about that as we go through all the different aspects and the stories of their experiences of life and work. So that collage is about me. It's about people. It's about fun. It's about getting the job done as well. And lots of good memories there from travelling and things like that. So our panel members today, let me introduce you to them. So first of all, we have Louise Middleton, who's the creative director and founder of CUDFA. So Louise, would you like to introduce yourself?
Hi, yeah, it's an absolute honour to be here with you today. Thank you for inviting me. I hope that I can answer some of your questions in an interesting way. I've got a off-grid campsite called CUDFA that has architectural hideouts in North Cornwall near Trebarwith Strand, and yeah, I've had a pretty interesting time. That part of my journey, I've had many parts to my journey, but yes, I'm sure you'll be hearing about it in a minute.
Thank you. We also have Tina Bessel, who has a wealth of experience all over the world: entrepreneur, radio presenter, volunteer, RAF pilot, intelligence officer. Tina, tell us a bit more about yourself. And you're on mute.
Thank you. Schoolgirl error already. Thank you, Louise, and I'm looking forward to speaking with Adi, who we'll hear from in a minute. And for me, the colour purple has dominated my life and working in a male-dominated environment. So my career started in the RAF as a pilot, as Lois alluded to, and one of the first pilots through a university air squadron system, and then into a cadetship. It was the first point of failure as well. I didn't make it as a pilot, and I transferred in the RAF. And if my slide picture can come up, you'll see I became an intelligence officer, which took me all over the world. Various challenges, particularly working in a multinational environment, which was quite difficult because of the cultural differences. And I'm a great believer in culture and how we work together, and became very much a purple officer, which is known as a joint officer in military circles. And having left the military once my children were born and it was impossible to pursue a career alongside my husband, who also had a military career, I became a radio presenter, and again became the female presenter on Pirate FM, the local commercial radio station, and still am connected to broadcasting through Radio Newquay. And post a career in radio and the bereavement of my mother, I embarked on a new entrepreneurial challenge, which is actually, again, dominated by the colour purple, because I set up a Cornish lavender farm, which years ahead of schedule last summer, because of COVID, I opened to the public, which I wasn't really expecting to do. And I'm finding my way along the way with a whole host of wonderful volunteers who I shall tell you about later in the event.
Thank you, Louise. And finally, last but not least, we have Adi Dove, who is a dancer and the founder of Kickback Street Kids. So, introduce yourself.
Hi. I'm so excited to be here, and so honoured to be with these amazing women. So I am the co-founder of KBSK. Which the mission is, I founded it when I was 15, and the mission being to make arts accessible to young people. Started on the council estate that I grew up on, and it just kind of is expanded over the years. I've been involved in various different projects, linking with the Granary Studio recently on a new project that I'm very, very passionate about, working with young offenders. Yeah, that's pretty much me, really.
Brilliant, thank you, Adi. Now, I think what we'll do is we do have some various photos from our three panelists and we want to just take some time to show you what their lives, their working lives, and their vocations in life actually are. So, Louise, do you want to say a couple of things about your photos?
Well, no one's ever seen this before, by the way. And I took it, I reckon it was about 3 years ago. And the reason why I wanted to put it on was, you know, as I said, I've got this campsite in North Cornwall, but it's on a 43-acre piece of land, and it's an old abandoned quarry. So it didn't have a road going up into it. And, you know, you could say that I tamed a quarry, which, you know, almost feels embarrassing to say, but it's not. You know, I put like a 3-mile road in. At one point I went to the bank and asked for, I think it was $3,000. And the woman behind the counter said, what are you buying? Because you have to check. And I said, I'm going to make a road. And she just burst out laughing. I think she thought I was going to get a gold ring or something like that. But, you know, there was, no, I like to put myself in front of challenge. It's something that I do regularly I think it's to keep myself alive, really, having that alive vitalness. But this picture, you know, Cwdvar, it has these architectural hideouts, which are, you know, they're site specifically made and quite luxurious, and, you know, very, very design led. But actually behind all of it, I lived in one of these caravans, and my 3 boys lived in the other one. And this is how we lived, you know, so it's not all, you know, you have this smoky mirrors, but behind it, there's, you know, a lot of hard work, and it's very easy to forget where you've come from sometimes and what adversity and challenge you have had, and that you actually need to pass through it in order to be able to look back and realize how resilient you are. And, you know, I lived in the caravan on the right hand side, you know, the water everywhere, an old generator in the background. It wasn't easy, but I loved it. You know, I might not have loved it at the time, but I just wanted to share this with you because I felt like, yeah, it's not easy. Things aren't easy, but when you get through them, when you feel alive, you know, you can be really proud of yourself. And it's important to challenge, and it's important to, push through and do things out of your comfort zone in order to receive, you know, the benefits and the gifts.
Thanks, Louise. That sets us off nicely, and we'll come back to some of the points that you've made whenever we start to get into conversation, because that's really interesting. So that's an example of one of your installations, what I call it.
Yeah, you could call it an installation. It's very, it's quite sort of furniture based in one way, but these Cwdvar were site specifically made in this sort of, what's actually called a habitat mosaic on this 43-acre. It was an abandoned slate quarry, and it has 5 different habitats, and these were site specifically made. So I co-designed them with a friend of mine who's now an architect. He wasn't at the time. And Cwdvar means hideout in Cornish, it's in that language. And I wanted people to feel safe when they were in the quarry, so it's like really high up, but I also wanted them to feel challenged, actually. So this is like the Cwdvar 7 meters tall. This one was the prototype, and there are 3 others, and then you'll see the Danish cabin comes next. This is the Danish cabin. So on our side, we've got a grade 2 listed engine house, which is amazing. That's on site, and it's the only fully restored engine house in North Cornwall. So we measured it all up, got its schematics, and built a 2/3 copy here. So often in architecture, you'll build 1-to-1s or 2/3, and so this is an exact representation of the engine house on site. And this actually sits above a 40-foot waterfall. The whole site is off-grid. It's organic. It hasn't been used since 1870, and yeah, it's a piece of paradise that I'm very lucky to be a custodian of.
Brilliant. Thank you very much. So let's move on to Tina. You've got some photos to show us about your life.
So the picture on the left-hand side, where I'm looking very filthy, is me coming off the back of land survival exercise training, which was part of my basic flying training. They teach you to replicate the scenario where you eject over enemy lines and you are hunted down, and you have to learn to look after yourself. And being the only girl amongst a group of 7 other lads, of course, they gave the chicken that needed killing for your supper to me. It's ironic now that I am the farmer, and sometimes I sadly do have to do that for real life. And it just shows, I suppose, the element of the male-dominated world of the RAF at the time. It's changing, and for the better, but as people and organisations and institutions realise that actually having women among their ranks, even doing traditionally, well, what were traditionally male roles, are no longer the exclusive sphere of men, shall we say. And I then went on into the intelligence world, having that flying experience of, behind me, to support forces across the nation, mostly in peacekeeping duties in the Balkans, but remotely also in Iraq and Afghanistan. And that final picture of me in my uniform is when I was commanding the Joint Services Signals Wings, which I can't really tell you much about what we did there, but it was near real-time operations, supporting people on operations, and was a challenging time being a female leader in charge of a unit of 600 strong, multi-disciplined and tri-service and civilian individuals. And my cohort, my co-leader, was also a woman on both occasions when they changed over. And it was quite a formidable environment to be in, where we were able to be strong but feminine. And I think that's important, to acknowledge that just because you're a woman, you're not weak, and it doesn't mean you're not capable of making strong decisions. From that, I developed a career in radio, and it's still my passion, working with Radio Nuki now, having had a career at Pirate FM, doing breakfast shows early mornings. And I think from that experience, my real takeaway is the value of communication, and being clear in your communication, and being engaging. And people often ask me at the time, how did I go from being a pilot and a military officer into radio? There are lots and lots of transferable skills. I'm a great believer and passionate believer in inspiring other people to do these roles, because weirdly, flying and intelligence work is directly comparable to radio, because I was taking information and sifting it and delivering it as a brief to individuals. In one case, it was maybe Iraqi air defense systems. In the other, it was showbiz, traffic and travel. So there's a lot of parallels that you can take these skills and take them into your future world. No longer do we have a job for life or a career for life. And then I've gone into another male-dominated world of farming. And yes, the picture at the background, and I love Louise's analogy about living in the caravan. That was us planting the very first Mayette plants. It took me 3 years to find them. And my friends Sarah and Frank there in the background helping, finishing off planting that, with other volunteers, Sally and Ian, and a whole host of local community friends who've helped me along the way. But my office sometimes literally is outside with my boots on, getting very wet and muddy, and yet still having to be on the computer to do all of the administration that goes behind being an entrepreneur and running a business. So over to you, Adi.
Amazing. I think for me, the core of everything that I do is to give people the opportunity to celebrate where they come from, to celebrate their roots. For so long, I was so ashamed of where I lived. And I think for me to provide a safe space for people to actually celebrate, like now I love my roots. I love the council estate that I grew up on. And to share that with the young people from various different estates or from any walks of life, that's really the core of everything that I do, is to actually celebrate And yeah, I think there's a picture hopefully coming up of the teaching that actually for me during COVID, it was something really special. When we were allowed to, we kind of took our sessions outside, and it was really amazing actually. It felt really raw, and yeah, it's something during this time that I would like to continue, actually, being outside, being grounded, being on the estates, being in open space. And yeah, that for me is something that I'm going to take away from this pandemic, because there was something so raw about it, and real. And, you know, that's where street kind of originated from. And it was a real vibe. And yeah, that's, I think, throughout this time, like going into the kind of the pandemic, there's been some really positives. Obviously, it's been very devastating, but the positives from, you know, finding opportunities to connect, and when you can connect, them being really special and really not taking that for granted ever again. But yeah, I mean, these were all taken when we could kind of be in groups and outside, and it's something that I definitely want to take forward in the work moving forward.
Brilliant, thank you. Thank you to Tina, Adi and Louise for just giving us an overview of their experience and their background. I think that was really useful, because the things that I have taken from that is about don't shy away from difficult circumstances. You might need to get your hands and your feet dirty at times to actually move on. And Tina's point around communication being really important, developing relationships, and just being authentic. Be yourself, just be authentic. So I think now we're going to move on to some questions, and I will, at the same time as I've got questions to speak to my panel members about, you're also putting questions in the chat, so I'm going to mix some of them in, so please do feel free to pop your questions in the chat and we will get to them. So the first thing we want to talk about today is around a time that you chose to challenge, and what happened, and what did you learn from that circumstance as well. And one of the questions that's come in from Paul already is around how can we make it comfortable to challenge, because challenge is often seen as a confrontational word in itself. So I think we'll start with Tina.
Okay, so there is an incident that happened a few years ago when a volunteering capacity that I'm going to talk about, that I will also, coming back to the comfortable to challenge point, and it was part of the Scout Association. I was a leader in a group where there was an individual who I didn't feel was supporting our group and adults who were giving up their time to deliver scouting for young children in a way that was supportive and professional. And there was a number of incidents which also culminated in a feeling from my husband, who was also giving up his time, of where untruths were being said and incidents were being blown out of proportion. And I will say I'm not proud of what happened next, because I chose to challenge alongside others in a way that was not, ultimately, looking back and reflecting on it, kind, because it was coming from a place of emotion and a feeling of injustice. And I think probably we didn't have an environment where it was a comfortable area to challenge. But because of my background in the military, and particularly in radio, we had a policy of courageous conversations. If something was wrong, you had a duty to challenge. But that only works if the people on the other side of that problem are open to being challenged and receptive to that challenge, and can accept that in a way that is not necessarily personal. And unfortunately, this incident did become very personal. And I think the thing that I come back to is that it's always important to, you see memes about this, about whether you put your words through, is it right, is it necessary, is it kind? And on this occasion, when we challenged, I felt it was necessary and right to, but in hindsight, it probably wasn't kind. And some of the things that were said were taken very personally because the culture wasn't there to accept it. Also, I personally had a prejudice or an assumption that the mediator in this particular incident was a very young individual who didn't have much experience. And in hindsight, I thought he's never going to be able to control this. But in reality, although he didn't do it the way I would have done it, he actually did it very well. And I think sometimes when you choose to challenge, and in this particular instance, we didn't keep the children at the front of the focus here, which was, it was about delivering scouting for the children. So although there was this adult conflict going on in the background, and sadly there was a fracture in the group and I personally had to walk away from it, I think sometimes you have to, in hindsight, take a step back and think, is the culture ready for the challenge? So taking your point and your question is, you know, what's the background? That comfortable, everybody has to have the same values and understand the challenge is coming from a good place rather than from a place of negativity.
Thanks, Tina. And I really resonate with the point that you've made there about kindness in particular, and really thinking through how you might handle situations as well. And that kind leadership is also important in terms of what we do. Adi, what would your challenge be?
Wow. Personally, I think there's so many different ways that we can challenge. And one particular time, and I'm going to go right back to when KBSK first started, I didn't use my voice, and instead of using my voice, I used what was said to actually fire and unite everything in me to then achieve what I've done now. So right at the beginning of the project and when it was first founded, it wasn't really taken very seriously, and that's fine. I was 15, and you know, but it was what I was described as, and I was described as the chav that teaches the kids to dance. And actually, instead of vocalizing and challenging what was said that way, like I said, it fired me to do everything that I could to reclaim that, in a way to show what this chav can do, to be proud of where I come from, so that every young person that I'm working with can feel proud of themselves too. And yeah, so for me, sometimes it's so important to use your voice, and other times, do you know what, just taking that and taking whatever it is to fire you is equally as impactful. And yeah, I think for me, it's just, I just wanted to share that, because at the time I didn't vocalize anything, but I definitely did challenge it.
Thanks, Adi. So words as well as deeds and attitude, there are different ways to go about things. We have had a question that is from Louise Oliver, which is about staying authentic while you're challenging, because often it's considered to be an aggressive act in a way. So Louise, can I ask you to maybe say something around how you might challenge in an authentic way?
I think one of my root position is that it's really important. It's kind of like a base rule for me, but it's really important to be immaculate with your words. You don't talk about anybody, you don't cause trouble, you do it with full open heart, you know, and one of the things with women that I find, because I've been in a really male dominant world, my father was in the military, funnily enough. I went to an all-boys school, which I got thrown out of eventually. I've had 3 sons, dominant ex-husband, you know, and you know, but I love the way women can do business. I think it's really interesting because it's very open, and to remain in that like really open space where there's an ability to be sort of full-hearted about it. There's so much power in that. There's so much power in it, because you get to the issues, you can get to the issues really, really quickly. And I think that, like, you know, that staying immaculate where you're just, you know, you kind of, you center and rise above it, and you just act from a place of, you know, you breathe and you act from a place of like pure pride. And obviously you have to work to get there, and, you know, life keeps giving you challenges. Believe me, like the last one that I had won't be the last one, and I know that now. So I'm ready. I'm so ready for it. And it becomes easier. And to know that, to just know that is really powerful.
Yeah, I love what you said there, Louise, about being full-hearted. I think it's a lovely way of describing something that allows you to challenge. From my perspective, I would say that I've often been in fairly male-dominated environments as well. Higher education is definitely getting better, but in terms of senior positions, there still are a lot of male colleagues across the university structure. And I find that I just try to be myself. Sometimes you do have to speak your mind, but you can do it in a way that has impact and is firm, but at the same time you've listened to what other people have said. So it's the balance between when you listen and when you choose to speak, whether it's a debate or whatever. Maybe what I could ask, because we were starting to get into the sort of male-dominated worlds and how we as women leaders would actually react or be proactive in that kind of situation. So there is another question in there, which I think is from one of our participants, that I'm going to ask Tina to talk about the military, the RAF, and being in a male-dominated environment and how you used your behaviour, your attitude to deal with situations.
Thank you. So I think that being in a male-dominated environment as a woman, as Louise has alluded to, is only works when you are authentic and you are real to yourself. And I think I've got a couple of instances. When I first went through my officer training, there was a young man who was on my flight, lovely chap, and he admitted to me after a couple of weeks that he was really jealous that I was joining the RAF as a pilot and he was joining as a navigator. Now, it turns out it's because of quotas, basically. If you're good enough, you get allocated one particular role, and then if you're not, then potentially you're offered another flying role, but not necessarily, you know, the pilot. You're the observer. And after a few weeks of training, and where I had been doing exactly what the boys had been doing, but being myself and contributing and leading and learning and being a good team member, because actually leading is about followership as much as anything, being a really good follower if you could be a good leader. But every time and every step of the way, being professional and being good at what you do and not to be afraid. This individual on the flight who had complained to me about his jealousy turned around a few weeks later towards the end of the course and said to me, "I have to give it to you, Tina." He said, "You are every bit as good as me and probably better, and you deserve your role as a pilot, right? And I will accept my lot as a navigator." His name was Rich Gibb. I love him and still remember him. And I just think actually that proved a point that actually you just need to be good at what you do and be professional. But there was another incident a few years later when I was on operations in Kosovo where a particular male French-German Eurocorps officer who was my boss bullied me. There's no way of getting away from it. He would undermine me. He would tell me off for sending emails to people if he didn't like what I'd said, even though I'd copied him in on it. And he went away for 2 weeks. And so I then did his job, and I did a good job because I was a good officer. And he came back and he completely undermined me again. He ridiculed me in front of the general staffs, and he made me feel this small. And he actually made me cry, not in front of him, because I would never have given him that satisfaction. But I went, backstage, if you like, and had a real good sob, spoke to some other officers who said to me, Tina, don't worry about it, just do your job. And I came back and I thought, I'm never going to apologise again for being good at my job, because actually that's what his problem was. He was threatened by me. And I think going back to that leadership in the male-dominated culture, you just have to do your job. Be professional, be good at what you do, and be proud of it. And don't apologise for it, because actually, what is wrong with that? We should all be professional and do what we do and just be proud. So I hope that answers the question.
I think it does. Thank you, Tina. Now, I think we're going to maybe talk around some of the things that you have done as leaders, as women leaders, in terms of staying resilient in the challenging environment during the pandemic, because obviously life has changed significantly, but each of you has your own business, has your own life to manage in that context. So if I can ask Louise, what have you done to stay resilient?
Well, one of the things that I notice about myself now, which is sort of, I always talk about people have talent and skill, and talent is natural and comes, and skill is learned. So you have to combine the two. And this is one of my learnings is, in times of challenge, just stepping back, slowing down a little bit, not being influenced by anyone else, and just checking in with yourself to see how you are, because it's very easy to be influenced by the people, or to kind of be quite knee-jerk and want to ask somebody for their help. And I think just very quickly going in and just seeing how you feel, how you authentically feel about this. And it's okay to feel anyway, scared, frightened, whatever it is. But what I notice now, which I am loving, and that's the skill and the growth, is that, things just don't hit me. It keeps coming and I can take it, and that's resilience. And in the pandemic, what I noticed about myself was that I didn't knee-jerk react. I didn't flip out. I just quietly took myself away, reviewed the situation, and dealt with it. And, I think maybe a quality that I have, or a talent that I have, is seeing in between the cracks, seeing where the opportunity lies. And that, you have to have a look, as AD said, even though the pandemic has been, on so many different levels, has been really difficult. There is also, you have to be calm to put yourself in front of opportunity. So it's creating that environment to be able to do that, step away, and also making sure that the people who are around you are great people, people that herald you and that can, make you rise. And that is a key skill. You have to be really immaculate with those things. You put yourself in front of great people that are going to support you, and you're going to support them. It's reciprocal. It's circular economy. It's a cycle. And that's, that's a good bit of advice.
Brilliant. Thank you, Louise. Now, Adi, you did mention the impact of the pandemic earlier on, but what have you done for yourself to keep yourself resilient during this time?
Well, this time for me has been the biggest opportunity for growth. If I'm completely honest, at the beginning of the pandemic, I did not have that calm like Louise spoke about. It was just react, you know, how can I help, everything that I do within the community. And this time has been, for me, the biggest opportunity for growth, because I have had to sit back and find that calmness. I've had to, which has been a real opportunity for some self-care and knowing my self-worth, which I feel within a lot of my work for such a long time have been missing. A lot of the young people that I work with, I was always telling them, you know, you can be better than me, you can do better than me, like, and it was always like I was teaching them that self-worth thing, but it was very, very confusing, because a lot of them were looking up to me and wanted to be like me, and then I'm telling them, you know, I wasn't showing them what self-worth was. I wasn't showing them, I was telling them to do it, but I wasn't showing them. And I think the last 12 months I've really found my self-worth, and it's always been something that's really missing from the work I do and just for me personally. So yeah, I mean, this last 12 months has been such a huge opportunity for personal growth that I can now as well go and take into the work that I do with all the young people that I work with.
Thank you. Now I'm going to go over to Tina, because there are some questions in the chat that are actually for Tina. One of them is about allyship in particular, but you may want to mention some of the other questions too, Tina.
Okay, yes, allyship. Well, thank you for that question, Dennis. In reality, actually, it comes back to the pandemic and resilience question as well that we were following on from Adi and Louise. And for me, the pandemic has been an incredible opportunity because I have weirdly inspired a number of women to volunteer their time to come and work on the lavender farm. And I don't know if Mel can show slide 4 on the presentation I sent through to her, but women have come along as a result of having a cream tea in my lavender field and have harvested lavender. They have helped me run workshops. They have developed my website. They have rebuilt my polytunnel. They have helped me with a business strategy day in order to develop my farm, because touches on what Louise was saying about talents and skills. I think I have reaped the benefits of years of investing in my community through volunteering and scouting and kids PTAs at schools and surf club and things like that. And in doing so, have created a community of friends and neighbours who have now invested back in me, either by buying lavender plants and helping plant them, and creating this whole community where through the pandemic, they would normally have been gig rowing or stuck inside homeschooling with kids, and instead have used their time to come and spend it outdoors, learning new skills and seeing my passion and it become their passion to help create a Cornish lavender field that can be a sanctuary. And that's exactly how we feel about it, that people can come and enjoy it. And you're getting absolute exclusive here, actually. That covered seating area was installed on Sunday, and I've not even put it on my social media, because we want to create these outdoor spaces where people can reconnect in the beautiful aroma and feel of the lavender world. So allyship, to me, going back to Dennis's point, is actually sharing that passion and actually giving up a bit of control. Because I could say I want it done by X, Y, and Z and be very, very military dictatorial about how I ask things to be done. But actually, when you have volunteers come in, they are giving their time for free and have helped me in a way that I couldn't do it all myself. And it may not be done the way I want it to be done, but it's being done good enough. I'm a great believer of the 80-20 rule. So allyship is a great thing. And then following on a question from Louise Oliver about how I've moved from the military to an entrepreneurial world, again, it goes back to what Louise was saying about talents and skills. I have some talents. There's a lot of skills I don't have. And it's being coming from that history of sort of public service and volunteering and then trying to work in a commercial world has been really hard. I don't know how to set price points and make profit and all of that sort of thing. And part of me doesn't want to, because that's what it's not completely about what my Lavender field is about, but it does have to be a commercial enterprise. So I think through these amazing volunteers and new allies and friends that I have asked them for help, and actually they have been so forthcoming. And again, we were talking about a community of women helping each other. I have gained so much from them. They tell me they have gained so much from being part of this journey. And collectively together, when we work together and build each other up and invest in each other, my God, we're a force to be reckoned with. So I think hopefully that encapsulates some answers to those questions.
Thanks, Tina. Now there is another question, and I think it would be interesting for us to think about how we would answer this, all of us. Shima has actually asked us about males that we've maybe encountered arguing that females shouldn't go on about the fact that we're actually female, and not make it about us. It's not all about us because we're female, and it should be up to us to meet the standards, which are arguably sometimes male standards. So how do we actually deal with that in terms of the challenge for us, and what would we say about an encounter like that with whether it's male colleagues or male line managers? One thing that I would say is that at Bournemouth University, most of the times where I have got a new job at a higher level, it has been mainly male members of staff who've made that decision about me when I've gone to interview. And I actually have experienced something that's positive from that. And the sort of the idea of allyship, when somebody sees your strengths, they see you, they see your strengths, they see your skills, they see that it fits the job. And it isn't just all about the fact that I'm a female dean, for example, but they actually see something in me that is great for the job and is going to be developed in that job, because we're always learning. But I've actually, I would say, benefited from having male allies in the workplace, but it's only because I work really hard, I'm authentic, and I'm honest and sort of true to who I am. If I want to speak, I'll speak. If I want to be quiet on a matter, I'll be quiet on it. So I think there's a bit of self-awareness in there for us as well about how we just think about dealing with things. Tina, did you want to come in on that?
I would say that actually, again, it's about, you touched on it, Lois, standards. And from a military flying point of view, I recall when I admitted that it was the first area I really failed at, I didn't meet the standard for males or females, judged by my male instructors. But I didn't meet the standards, period. Move on. You know, I was a good pilot. I was not a good fast jet pilot. There wasn't the opportunity to be a helicopter or transport pilot. I took that flying experience into the intelligence world where we're supporting pilots, male and female. And it doesn't matter. You just have to be good at what you do and be professional, I think. And I would say that quite possibly it's generational. I certainly found from a military experience, my peer group, my male peers, were fine with me being a girl as long as I could do the job. The people that had maybe joined a military that didn't have women in it serving in the roles that I was able to, struggled. Not all, some of them were fantastically supportive, but some were not. And I think that was a generational thing as much as anything. So, but when you encounter that sort of, you shouldn't shout about International Women's Day, for example, well, I'm sorry, I think we should. There's still a lot of inequality in the world. For me, it's about equality. And sometimes you have to have that voice and choose to challenge, as Adi was talking about earlier, because if you don't, the equality will never be there. There's still only 10% female pilots in the RAF. That's because they had a quota at the start, you know, and because women leave and have families. And you're never going to get, it doesn't have, you know, but as a population, we're 50-50. So it's about equality as much as anything.
Yeah, I agree. Adi, I wonder if we could get you to say something around how you feel about the environment you work in and the role of males within that environment, and how you build relationships in your environment.
Yeah, I mean, for me, I absolutely agree with what Tina just said about it being equality, and that for me, as I would call myself a feminist, it is about equality of the sexes. It does not mean that, I feel like sometimes, if I'm going to be completely honest, the movement has gone to, you know, hating men. And that's something that I'm really passionate about. That's not what I'm about. That's not what this movement should be about. Women do have, there is still a long way to go, I feel. There's, especially in the dance world, there has been various times of a lot of not very nice things going on, and women being very sexualized, and that kind of feel. And there's been various comments that I've had, and it's not come from necessarily it's just come from a very uneducated place of comments like, you know, you're good at the fluffy stuff, you need someone to think for you, them kind of things that, you know, that it's not necessarily coming from, it's just uneducated. And I feel that it is so important to celebrate International Women's Day, but celebrate, that doesn't mean that it's just women celebrating that. Some of the most incredible feminists that I know are men, and that's what the movement is about for me. It's about coming together as humans for a fairer society, for equality, and yeah, so that's my kind of, yes, that's my take on it.
Brilliant, thank you. I think that it basically encapsulates everything that any of us would have wanted to say. I'm conscious of the time, so I'm going to ask our final question for today, which is about what our panelists would like to share with other women who would maybe be thinking about growing their business or having an influence in their chosen industry. So it's about advice, and I'm going to come to you, Louise, first.
It's about being brave. I feel like, you know, just giving it a really good go and expecting challenge, expecting difficulties, but sort of reframing them. I talk about my new thing is talking about 0.01% adjustment. It's like looking through a lens, camera lens, and just shifting it a tiny bit. And it is about perception. Like we can choose to say this is going to be really difficult, or we can choose to say this is going to be really interesting. I am going to grow. And yes, I think it's like that bravery and just knowing, just trusting through speaking to, you know, your allies, your council, who you decide that you're gonna put yourself in front of them, be around, be near, and just having a look at that, changing perception a little bit, and also very importantly, you know, as I said before, and it is a really big thing, is just not being around people that you don't need to be around. Like, we almost don't need to have the conversation that we just had a minute ago, in a way, you know, it is, because it is about fairness and it's about humanness. And, you know, it's like, just keep looking in the directions, you know, it's about us growing as a world in a very, very difficult, you know, our world is changing massively. I've got 3 boys, I've got twins that are 13, and that was quite challenging, and still is, believe me. And I've got a 16-year-old son. You know, they're growing up in a different world now, which is, I think there is more of a balance. And, you know, my job as a mom is, you know, and a businesswoman, is to teach them everything I know from a feminine perspective, and hope that they take that on. But, you know, we need to help them, and all we need to be doing are positive things. If we can, we get to choose to do that. It's just moving forward directionally and that's a perception every day. We get to choose to do that.
Yeah, brilliant, thank you. And I'm going to give a final word on this question very briefly to Tina.
Thank you, Lois. I absolutely echo what Louise said about being brave. I think when I talk about opening the lavender field last summer, which I didn't expect to do, I literally pulled on my big girl brave pants and just got on with it. You've just got to do it, and you're going to make mistakes. Don't be afraid of that. Do not be afraid. You learn from those mistakes, grow. We've talked about that. Adie's talked about how much personal growth she's gone through. I absolutely agree. You just have to not be afraid. Do it, because it's really easy to prevaricate and to self-sabotage, and I'm awful at that, putting off jobs. Just do one thing after another, and I would also say, you know, be kind to yourself as well. I'm the worst for writing to-do lists that I never do, but at the end of the day, check your done list, because it doesn't mean you haven't done nothing. As long as you've moved forward in small steps, that's a good day. You know, and finally, I would say surround yourself with good people who inspire you, as Louise was saying, because collectively your power is incredible by doing that, and just the energy is really, really good. So if you're not surrounding yourself with good people and taking male and female, then that's probably where you're falling down. In terms of a business moving forward in any sphere of your life.
Great, thank you, Tina. Now, I just want to thank our panelists again, Louise, Tina and Adie, for all of your insights. It's been fantastic. I've really enjoyed it. So thank you to all of you. And I'm now going to pass over to Anna to close the session.
Hi everybody, I'm Anna J and I'm one of the founding members of Cornwall Women's Fund. I'd like to say thank you so much to everybody who joined us, and to Lois, to Tina, Adie and Louise for sharing your amazing stories and experiences. You've really inspired us all this afternoon. Just a bit of final information. If you're a member of CMI, you can log into the Management Direct system using the live link in the chat box, where you can find exclusive practical development resources. And if you haven't yet subscribed, you can also find a link in that chat box. If you'd like to find out more about Cornwall Women's Fund and the projects we're already supporting across Cornwall, or you'd like to become a member, or simply find out a bit more and be updated on what we're doing, you can visit our website, which is cornwallwomensfund.co.uk, or email admin@cornwallwomensfund.co.uk. So thank you again, everybody, for joining us. Thank you so much again to all our panel members. We hope you've taken some inspiration from our speakers this afternoon, and enjoy the rest of your day.